The Pratts, age 6, page 17. When the snow melted in early March, Mom put the little kids in the stroller and took us outside. We played a game called Signs of Spring. Mom awarded points to any one of us who noticed buds on the bushes, a few small blades of grass, or maybe a flower named a crocus pushing up through the muddy dirt. My world on Acorn Street seemed perfect, complete. But certain things began to happen that made me aware of another, bigger world. The Pope died, Mom said one morning at breakfast. Who's the Pope? I asked. He was the head of the Catholic Church, she explained. He was the holiest man on earth. I knew one thing for sure. The Pope would go straight up to heaven. That night I stood at my bedroom window hoping to see the silvery soul of the Pope rising from the earth. The next afternoon, Jimmy and I took a hike in the woods. We reached an old stone wall, scrambled over it, and made a right turn. Sunlight filtered through the trees and danced along the path. This way, Jimmy said, pointing. I followed him. The air turned warm and heavy, and the ground felt spongy, like we were near a swamp. I smelled the sour odor of skunk cabbage, but Jimmy kept going, pushing through the thick brush. It seemed like we were in the deepest, wildest part of the forest. And all of a sudden, we stepped onto grass. Somebody's backyard. We saw two old people staring at us, a man and a woman. The man waved us over. Come here, he called. We walked carefully over the lawn to the brick patio. There was a neat row of rose bushes and a table set with a bowl of red grapes, a plate of sliced cheese, fancy crackers, and a bottle of wine. Hello there, the woman spoke in a kindly voice. I'm Sophie Pratt, and this is Arthur Pratt. Are you from around here? Kind of, I said. We couldn't have been far from our house, but the smooth lawn and rose bushes made it seem like a whole different neighborhood. What are your names? I'm Ralph. Jimmy. What's your last name? Fletcher. Ah, the Fletchers. Sophie Pratt gave us a huge grin. We don't live but 6 houses away. My eyes wandered over to the grill. A whiff of burning charcoal grazed past my nose, carrying with it a sweet smell. My stomach growled. Mr. Pratt lifted the hood of the grill. Leaning forward, I saw 2 rows of clams cooking a few inches above the charcoal. I also saw what smelled so good, a little crock of melted butter. Best way to cook 'em, the man explained. Heat makes 'em open right up. Want to try one? Jimmy shook his head, but I figured, why not? We weren't supposed to accept food from strangers, but these old people were neighbors. Mr. Pratt took one of the clams off the grill, lifted it from the shell, dunked it in that pot of melted butter, and popped it into my mouth. How was that, dear? Sophie Pratt asked. Great, I said, nodding. It was so delicious I ate 2 more. Seeing my reaction, Jimmy ate a couple clams, too. We left a little while later, promising to come back and visit soon. But I didn't see them until a month later. It was just another morning until Lainey came running in from outside. Come on, she yelled. Emergency! What? I started pulling on sneakers. Some kind of bomb fell in the Pratt's front yard. A bomb? We sprinted down to the Pratt's house. There were police cars and lots of strange men I'd never seen before. Some were yelling, Stand back! Stand back! I saw an ugly hole maybe 5 feet long and 3 feet wide in the middle of the Pratt's front lawn. Water was gushing out, making pools on the grass, spilling onto the sidewalk, and streaming down one side of Acorn Street. I spotted Sophie Pratt standing near the hole. She was crying, with her husband beside her. 2 policemen were talking to them. I saw Mr. Fishman, the father of my friend Steve. What happened? I asked him. Was it a bomb? I don't think so. He shook his head. A bomb would have ripped a much bigger hole than that. Somebody said it was part of an airplane that fell off. Somebody else said it might be a dummy bomb. A dummy bomb? I never heard of such a thing. He shrugged. Could be some kind of military gadget, maybe a test that went wrong. There are lots of rumors, but nobody seems to know. More people kept arriving, women holding little babies, kids on bikes, a man taking pictures, men from the Marshfield Water Department. The water sluicing down Acorn turned everything muddy. Then some men showed up with fancy uniforms and unsmiling eyes. Soldiers. They set up a barricade and sealed off the street. This forced all the cars to turn around, even people who lived on Acorn Street. I wanted to stay and watch all the action, but the soldiers made us go home. The whole thing was pretty exciting, and it made me realize that there was a whole world out there, immense and dangerous, beyond the cozy world I knew on Acorn Street. We never did find out what happened, though one night I dreamed that it was the Pope who fell out of heaven and punched a hole in the Pratt's lawn. Teeth, page 25. Mom had a tooth bank, shaped like a coconut. When one of our teeth came out, she washed off the blood and deposited the tooth into the bank. Why are you saving our teeth? Jimmy wanted to know. Because, she smiled. They're precious to me, and so are you. Great-grandma came to visit 2 or 3 times a year. She was old and tiny. Great-grandma always wore a gray sweatshirt way too big for her and smelled like the ginger snap cookies she baked. She put whole chunks of ginger into the cookies, so when I bit into them, they made my eyes water. I loved her with all my heart and pretended to love those cookies so I wouldn't hurt her feelings. Great-grandma had a slow walk, and I liked to secretly follow her as she moved through the house or out in the yard. Her hearing wasn't very good, so she never knew when I was spying on her. Early one morning, I heard her outside my bedroom, going downstairs. I waited until she reached the bottom stair before I got out of bed and followed her. She padded into the kitchen, dressed in slippers and a gray sweatshirt. What was she doing? Getting a snack? Making coffee? Moving closer. Careful to stay out of sight, I saw her go into the pantry. I was amazed when she came out holding that tooth bank. She unscrewed the rubber plug on the bottom, emptied some teeth into her hand, and went out the back door. I knew if I followed too closely, she'd catch me spying, so I eased out the front door and ran around the house. The grass was a cold, wet shock to my bare feet. Stealing from tree to tree, I saw Great-grandma go into the garage. A minute later, she came out carrying a trowel, then went to the vegetable garden in the back of the house. I crept up until I was about 30 feet away, close enough to see her kneel down and start digging a hole in the ground. She put one of the teeth into the hole, covered it with dirt, and patted it down. She did the same thing 3 more times. Then she turned around and moved slowly back toward the house. I made myself wait 5 minutes, then 5 more, before going to the garden spot where she planted our teeth. I don't know what I expected to see. Finally, I went inside and snuck up to my bedroom. I never told anyone about this, and Great-grandma never said anything. But I had a million questions in my head. Did she plant the teeth figuring they'd bring good luck to our house? Did she think they'd fertilize the tomatoes? Was she just plain crazy? Nothing unusual sprouted in the garden that summer, but every time I went past that spot, I checked to see if one of those teeth had taken root in the soil and started to grow. Words, page 29. Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me. Well, that's what everyone said. But was it true? Words were tricky. They seemed to have a secret life of their own. Mom wrote the word here and showed me the word ear that was hidden within it. That was cool. Sometimes a word had its own disguise, with a sound that didn't tell you which one it was. You could hear the word see, but it might really be C, S-E-A, or even the letter C. The same with bear, B-A-R-E, and bear, B-E-A-R, red and red. I was fascinated by swears too, curse words. You could have a perfectly respectable word like ship, but change one letter at the end and you might get your mouth washed out with soap. One day, Freddie Black, a kid who lived down the street, came to my house and taught me the worst swear you could possibly say. He said it to me just as my father came out of the garage, grunting under the weight of the storm windows. He was carrying on his back. Dad hadn't heard, but the swear hung in the air like a bad smell. I felt guilty, learning a nasty word like that while my father was working so hard. Can I help? I asked Dad later that afternoon. He was outside the garage, dusting off the screen windows. Sure thing, he said, handing me a whisk broom. The day had grown cold and windy. The dirt I brushed off got blown back into my face. Hey, Dad, I asked, if you say Jesus, is that a swear? Depends on how you say it, he replied. If you just say the name Jesus, it's okay. But if you take the Lord's name in vain, that's a swear, and it's wrong. The trees sighed in the breeze. I had always wondered exactly what that meant. Take the Lord's name in vain. The wind blew again, a gust strong enough to twist the screen out of my hands. What do you think he said? I yelled. With that, Dad grabbed my arm, angrily swatting my bottom, and sent me into the house. My bottom hurt, but my feelings hurt even worse. Maybe words couldn't hurt you, but they sure could get you into trouble.